let's get started, and people will continue joining, and that's fine. Can you hear me and see me clearly? All good on that side? Great, thank you. Thank you very much for joining our final open office for the season. We will be taking a break over the summer holidays, and then look at restarting in August. So just we'll send you information as we get those details out. But it's been a really wonderful process for me to be able to reach out to a community every Wednesday night, and I love the questions that I get. I love the opportunity for me to share what I do. I do that every day on a one-on-one basis and through the workshops that I run. But this is just lovely to be able to say, look, I'm available to answer questions. I'll share a topic, a topic of the day, and then to really have it as an open space for communication and for me to share what I know. Let me start. I see that there are some familiar names in the participants and some new names. Let me start by introducing myself, and then I will get into the material proper around perimenopause. My name is Pooja. I run the nutrition clinic. I started the nutrition clinic 12 years ago. We set up, and by we, a business partner, a partner of mine who has now moved to the UK. We set up the nutrition clinic at Camden Medical Center with this view to create a space where people can experience eating well without it feeling like a restriction. With we used to serve these amazing meals as part of our workshops. And obviously the world has changed a lot since then, and we can now do Zoom-based meetings and talk about what's latest in the world of nutrition and looking after yourself through the lifestyle strategies that are available to us. And it's been this amazing adventure. We started at a medical clinic. We then moved into a shop house where we continued the same kind of work with just helping people, seeing them face to face. And then with COVID happening, we decided to move our practice to a virtual practice. I now run a hybrid practice. I do see people face to face on request, and I see most of my clients on Zoom, and I see people regionally, globally as well. So it's just opened up a lot of opportunities for me. This is a second career for me. I trained as a scientist. I'm trained as a biochemist, and I was working in the healthcare industry on the business side of things for many years before I became interested in my own healthcare, what was happening to my body. At the age of 35, I was told that I wouldn't be able to conceive naturally, and I was starting to look at the IVF options. But there was this voice in my head that said to me that I needed to really go back to basics and look at what was happening in my body. And so I did research on the space of nutrients and hormones, toxins and hormones. What do we do on a daily basis that impacts our hormones? So this was a while ago. I got pregnant at the age of 38. My daughter is now 14. By the time I got pregnant, I felt healthier at 38 than I did at 28. And I knew that something fundamental had changed in my body. And so the whole space of hormones has been interesting for me. I've run a fairly general practice. I work with people on gut health, with eczema. But over the years, as I've been going through my own hormonal changes, I've become particularly interested in the space of perimenopause. I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. It's interesting for the scientist in me is interested, the nutritionist in me is interested, but I think just the woman in me is also interested because I think we enter perimenopause in our technically 40s and 50s. So I know that I was just wrapping up my fertility years when I started getting perimenopause symptoms. But even with the knowledge that I had, I wasn't fully aware that it's perimenopause. And I want this to be a conversation that goes beyond this audience. Talk to your friends and your sisters and your cousins about it, because I think a lot of women are quietly, silently experiencing changes and they're not able to articulate it because there are so many symptoms. And I'll get into that. But I feel like I found a voice in an area that I want to bring not just the knowledge that I do with the clients that I work on, but I think a conversation, a community around to support women going through this, around this whole space. So that's what the topic is today. We are making some changes. So you'll see we have a new website coming. It'll be ready over the summer break. And we're really aligning ourselves more to this whole space of supporting women through hormonal change. So let's dig into the topic in a little bit more. Just to say that since this is a group format, this information is for educational and informational purposes. I'm not a medical doctor. I am a healthcare practitioner, but I do not give medical advice. So none of this is supposed to replace a doctor's advice. I hope what I share with you is something that you can use and implement immediately. But if there is a medical situation, please see a doctor, have a chat with me and see, what's the next step for you to take to integrate, the different worlds out there of healthcare advice. We've been doing this for 12 years. We've worked with over 3,500 people. It's now 12 years. This is a little outdated. We've been voted the best nutritionist in Singapore by Expat Living Reader's Choice. And we track how people feel. We track our clients' progress on a monthly basis. The tracking is very important for us. And this is the reason is very simple. I think the world of complementary healthcare can sometimes feel really complex and overwhelming. And if as a client, you're not feeling better, and if that's not measured, it can sometimes feel like, why am I doing what I'm doing if I don't know if I'm getting better? So I think it's very important from day one, it was very important to me that I understand that my clients are getting better and they know that they're getting better. We have, as humans, we forget things. So you could sort of in January, you could feel tired. And by March, if you're feeling less tired, you've forgotten what it felt like in January. And so if you have that data, I felt this way, and this is what's changed over 3 months or over 6 months. It's very, very motivating, empowering. And for us, of course, it's wonderful information that we collect on our clients. So 85% of our clients reduce their symptoms within 3 months of working with us. And this is a wide range of symptoms, not just hormonal health, but gut health, skin related issues. When I collect all the symptoms, that's the data that we've collected. As I said, I'm trained as a scientist. When I decided to shift careers, I trained as a nutritionist, and then I found functional medicine as a space that particularly interested me. Functional medicine really appeals to the biochemist and scientist in me because it's all about finding these connections. The work I do is really like that of discovering a jigsaw puzzle where we're looking at the body and saying, what are we finding as root causes issues? And that's really the direction I've gone into. I've trained through a wonderful mentor called Dr. Dan Kalish, who's based out of California. I've received additional certificates and trained at the Institute for Functional Medicine as well. I continue training. Right now, my focus is on hormone health, of course, and I'm digging a lot deeper into that space. So what will we cover today? I am going to be putting everything through the lens of the functional medicine approach to navigating perimenopause. So I'll share with you what happens to your body in perimenopause, some of the strategies and interventions that do work. And along the way, I'll share some success stories and, some stories from the clients I have worked with to really motivate you to use food, nutrition, lifestyle to transform your experience or a family member's experience through hormone changes. So at the Nutrition Clinic, our focus is to help motivated women feel good again without extreme lifestyle changes so that they can reclaim a vibrant life, even if they feel unheard and don't know what to do next. It's very important to me that the work we do is without the extreme. I think there is a lot of extreme thinking and ideology out there, and I don't think it always works. I don't think you have to go to an extreme for things to work. I think consistency matters more than extreme. I think it's very important to reclaim that vibrant life, and I think it's very important to feel heard and to have a plan. I'm very big on taking what's complex and simplifying it. If you can't simplify it, it doesn't work. So I don't like my clients to leave with 20 things that they need to buy and do. I don't want to overwhelm them further. They're already overwhelmed. So I try to simplify things as much as I can. And I've created a system over the last 12 years that helps me do that. What I do see in my practice, and the reason we're really pivoting to the space of hormone changes, I see a lot of women come in their 40s and 50s. Quite honestly, this process really starts in mid-30s. There is this shift, there's more tiredness, sleep is not as good, weight goes up, and this constant feeling of being wired and tired. And this is in spite of people eating well, working out, and trying to do everything right. And the root cause for this is a hormonal change. Now, your hormones are messengers. They're messengers. And it's important to know that all hormones are interconnected. So if we're talking about female hormones, we also know that that's going to impact the thyroid. That's going to impact your stress hormones. That's going to impact your sleep hormones. That's going to massively impact your blood sugar and insulin related hormones. They're all interconnected, and they are like these dominoes. When you work on one, the others get better or worse. So if there is a shift in hormones, that is going to create an issue with metabolism, sleep, and mood. It can affect blood sugar and energy, and it can just overwhelm the body, so that innate healing process doesn't feel the same. And this is what I've heard so much of in the last decade plus. Women come in saying, why do I suddenly not feel okay? I don't feel bad enough to require medication. In some cases, they come in with a diagnosis as well. But there's just this gray zone where you're not feeling great, and these little symptoms are just niggling and picking up. If you don't get a handle, if you don't even understand the way your body works and know what to do with it, you can end up in this continuous survival mode. This is something that I see a lot. So when your body is under long-term stress, and quite honestly, for most people, that is the reality. I have seen so many clients, and I have conversations about stress on a daily basis. The reality is that more people are mostly in this continuous survival mode. They are stressed. They're not able to, they're in this cycle, right? Work, home, family, being busy, doing a lot. And there's nothing wrong with stress. So I want to start by saying there's nothing wrong with achievement or stress. But if there isn't a break, you can end up in this fight or flight zone. That can affect weight, that can affect inflammation, that can affect gut imbalances. It can impact even down to autoimmunity being a consequence. It can impact blood sugar being upset. So there's a lot that can happen simply through one piece in the body changing. For women, this is the hormonal journey. It starts with the period, and these are some of the symptoms that are common. They're not for everybody in same intensity, but these are fairly common. Most women or most girls don't pay attention to this too much, but it's only when you try to get pregnant that you start paying attention and you start getting some of the blood work done, right? So this is when women start paying attention to their hormones, and they're very aware of the cycle and the impact and the meaning behind that cycle. I see a lot of people who are dealing with the thyroid issue. I see a lot of women dealing with PCOS, some fertility, kind of women dealing with infertility come to see me as well. And then post-pregnancy, there is this period where I think women are very, very vulnerable. This is when the body it's gone through a major change, and we are still putting, the female body has always dealt with fertility, but there are more stresses on the body and the mind today than there were generations ago. So there is this sense of nutrients being depleted, being burnt out. Thyroid and autoimmunity can come up as an issue at this point. Blood sugar issues can come up at this point. Burnout is a big thing that I see in this category. And this category of people can really go from 35 to 50. And it's only in this, and so in the 40s, we start sort of experiencing some of the perimenopause symptoms. And these are very, very typical. There's a whole bunch, there are over 80 symptoms that come under the perimenopause category. So these are the things that are most common. So if you look at perimenopause and menopause in a little more closely, early perimenopause starts in the mid-40s. The definition of menopause is when you've gone for 12 consecutive months without a period. The average age to menopause is 51. And then this is just, early menopause and late menopause. So things change in post-menopause, because this is when we have to be more concerned about cardiovascular health, bone health. This is where we need to start really looking at nervous system and mood changes, metabolism changes. And for a number of reasons, this is also an age where women need to be more careful with just checking about things like growths and fibroids and other cysts and other growths. There's a bit more vulnerability at this point. So the body in perimenopause, begins to change. You become less fertile and hormone levels fluctuate. The way I like to describe it is like the operating system of the body is going from fertility as a focus to nervous system as a focus. So these are some of the changes that women experience as part of perimenopause. And, women don't like to feel this way. So it suddenly feels like, why is my body not doing what it did in its 20s and 30s? And some of this is simply life, just, body changing. And some of this can be dealt with through the work that we do. So what's happening at this time? And this is a really interesting graph because it shows us the many, many things that are happening, right? So estrogen has been around. Estrogen and progesterone have been there since puberty. They start dropping, but you will notice that estrogen doesn't just drop. It goes up and down. And in fact, this period in the 40s, estrogen levels can actually be quite high relative to progesterone, which just drops down. Estrogen and progesterone, like this image shows, they're like dance partners. They closely speak to each other. What happens in your late 30s, early 40s is progesterone just says, bye, I'm gone. And estrogen, relative to progesterone, is suddenly feeling like there's too much of it. And this causes a lot of the symptoms like hot flashes and weight gain and cysts and growth. So this is something that we are very aware of, right, at this point. Testosterone goes down, but look at this melatonin, our sleep hormone, which has been steady at this time, suddenly takes a dive. So you've got, with progesterone dropping and estrogen being relatively high, you've got hot flashes. With melatonin going down, you've got sleep. A lot of women complain about hot flashes at night, affecting their sleep quality and just the ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. Now, I'd like to say one more thing about estrogen. Our body makes estrogen, but we also have something called xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens are estrogen-like compounds that all of us are exposed to through our environment. So these are compounds found in pesticides, in plastics, in fragrances, in chemicals that our body is exposed to. These chemicals are called xenoestrogen. And what that means is they're estrogen-like. And when they're estrogen-like, they add to the overall load of estrogen. So you can imagine in your 40s where anyway estrogen is feeling like there's too much of it compared to its partner progesterone. And if you have an exposure to external estrogen, that can create a lot of growth in the body issues. So think of fibroids and cysts. This is where we get really worried about what's growing in that space. This condition where you have relatively high levels of estrogen is called estrogen dominance. And it's really at the root of a lot of the night sweats, the hot flashes, the irregular periods. Or a lot of this comes from that estrogen level being relatively high. Now, when I'm working with somebody in this age group, I'm very, very concerned about estrogen dominance because getting this under control is critical. Just knowing what's happening, I think, is the first step. Is my estrogen level normal? Is it getting metabolized well? Is it exiting the body the way it needs to? Or is it lingering around because there isn't the exit route? And is it lingering around and creating a problem? I think this becomes a fundamental question that we need to all ask. So there's a paradigm shift, right? So I think the big paradigm shift is women are saying in our 40s and 50s and beyond, we want to be strong, we want to be healthy, we don't want to be old, and I think the whole view of how we age is also changing. We want to own that process. And so what am I, with the functional medicine work that I do, able to offer you? I'm able to participate in this paradigm shift by looking at food, particularly looking at inflammation and blood sugar, looking at gut health, looking at movement, stress management, estrogen metabolism, looking at the right botanicals and the right nutrients. How do I do this? This is the system that I've used. This is what I've created over the last 12 years. And this is my formula, my blueprint, my personal map, no matter what symptoms my clients come with. So you could come in with eczema, you could come in with fibroids, you could come in with fertility issues, you could come in with perimenopause issues or thyroid. I'm looking at it through this lens. It changes, but it's really this lens that matters to me. And this is the way I think I've organized what I think is complex in the body and simplified it. So I like to divide the body into 3 systems. This is your nervous system and your hormonal system. This is your digestive system, and this is how you clean up and detoxify. Now, I'm going to take an example of a client, somebody who's in her 40s, feeling extremely tired, feeling burnt out, not able to sleep, suddenly feels bloated and has developed eczema in her 40s. Right? Very, very typical of the kind of person I see. What would I be thinking about, or what would I want to know for somebody like that? I'd want to know about the HPA axis. The HPA axis is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. This is your stress response, your fight or flight. Are you responding to stress and recovering from it, or are you staying in this fight flight zone? Are you dealing with old childhood trauma that may be affecting you? So stress is not just emotional stress, it's your old story. It is what's going on in the gut. It's stress physiologically as well as psychologically. If this is off, it's going to affect mood. It's going to affect neurotransmitters, so happy chemicals are not produced as easily. It's going to affect blood sugar levels and therefore energy, and it's overall going to affect hormones. But what's really interesting is what happens in the brain affects the gut, and what happens in the gut affects the brain. And so the same person could have a food sensitivity or two. Gluten is the most common food sensitivity that I see in my practice, followed by dairy, followed by eggs. So we want to know if this individual has food sensitivities. I want to know if this person has a balanced microbiome. We carry 30 to 40 trillion organisms in our gut. It's a massive population, and there's more genetic material that's microbial than human in the body. So we want to know if consumption of sugar, consumption of antibiotics, consumption of pesticides that are in our food, consumption of alcohol has impacted a shift in the microbiome. Lack of sleep can also affect the microbiome. And a lot of my clients say to me, but I take a probiotic, and that's great, it's fine. But taking a probiotic is like throwing seeds in the soil and hoping they create flowers, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the probiotics are making a home. So the gut is very much like that garden, and we are making sure that you have enough flowers and not too many weeds. There'll always be some weeds, and that's okay as long as you have enough flowers. Whatever happens in the gut then goes down the channel into liver detoxification. Now, I don't believe in detox diets. I don't believe in detox programs. So if somebody calls me, I had a call just from an inquiry a couple of weeks ago saying, can you put me on a detox program? I don't do that. Detoxification is a process that your body goes through. What we're looking at is asking, is your body able to do it? Is something getting in the way? Can we help the body do what it does well naturally? Detoxification is a very nutrient demanding process, so you need to make sure you have your nutrients in place. So a person with hives or eczema recently in their 40s, the first thing I think about is, are they detoxifying well? Because the estrogen changes are also going to put pressure on their liver detox processes. A little bit like the belt at Changi Airport. If you have too much luggage, it doesn't clear. So if you have the estrogen, plus you have food changes, stress also indirectly puts pressure on the liver. It can just mean that you have an issue with detoxification, and that can show up as an issue on the skin. I'm going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail. So stress and sleep can cause some of these symptoms, and these are just common symptoms. This is not an exhaustive list, but I'm putting this out here so that if you resonate with any of this, if you have pain, for example, you may not be connecting that as a stress risk, as a consequence of stress. If you have weight loss resistance, you may not be thinking that that has to do with stress and sleep. So just to help you navigate what's happening in your body. Over here with diet and gut health, obviously bloating, reflux is super intuitive, but eczema has to do with gut health. Anxiety has to do with gut health. Blood sugar issues also have to do with gut health. And with detoxification, allergies, eczema, chemical sensitivities, anything growing in the in the uterus, breast cysts as well, hot flushes would all come under the detoxification side of things. How do we take all of this? I think a lot of my clients appreciate that this is a lot. And, with all due respect to other practitioners out there, I do find that a lot of people focus on, let's just find out your food sensitivities, or let's just get into detoxification or gut health. And I think that's fine. I think doing any of this work is great, but I think what we're able to do really well is hold all the pieces together, because there are a lot of pieces over here. And the system we use to just navigate that and make sure we're all on track is this. Always start by getting to know the person, really getting to know their story. So my first appointments take an hour, where I'm getting to know the person. I'm getting to know how they eat, what time they wake up, what time they exercise, just to understand their habits and their lifestyle and any medical information that we have on them. I then introduce them to some of the tests that we can run, and we get everybody started on a food plan. That's the first thing we do, is just to clean up the diet, to put them on a blood sugar balancing, anti-inflammatory diet. My tests take a month to come in. So in that month, they start cleaning up their diet. Once we get results, we really start breaking each of these down. So we very closely look at stress and sleep. We look at gut health. We look at detoxification. And the amount of time and the work we do really depends on their experience, their history, and the data we collect from their tests. So the biomarkers that we collect from their tests really guide the direction we take. And a lot of people are surprised that I put metabolism here. Metabolism is not about just getting on a diet. It's about balancing all of this. Same with hormonal balance and long-term resilience. So before I get into the second part, so I wanted to share just like an umbrella view, a macro view of what can be done. I'm now going to go into a couple of these areas in a little bit more detail. And I'd like to share with you some tips that you can take away today, just so you can implement them immediately. So let's deep dive into blood sugar. So when I put somebody on a foundational eating plan, this is the sort of thing I'm looking at. I'm looking at how much sugar are they consuming. I don't track calories. I don't even track all macros, but I start by tracking sugar and carbohydrates. So this person eating oats with blueberries and orange juice for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, an acai bowl for a snack, and a wrap for dinner is not eating badly at all. I mean, I see that this is, to me, I would say reasonably a good food, a day of eating. But this is 58 teaspoons of sugar a day. And so if this person comes in thinking, I'm trying to eat right, so I've got oatmeal, I've got blueberries, and I'm doing the acai bowl, like, why am I tired? The answer is very simple. Your blood sugar levels on this is just going to be on this massive sugar roller coaster. Now, we can make some simple changes and reduce that 58 to 15 by bringing in some protein. So you've got some eggs, some fish, by making sure that carbohydrates are really pulled back. We're not cutting them out completely, but really pulling them back. And you will get a really different experience in terms of energy. You'll also notice that there's a lot more variety of vegetables. There is just a larger portion of protein, and there is enough food. This is not, the work I do is not about starving. I don't like to starve. I love food. I want to work with people who enjoy food, but enjoying food to me is not eating fast food. I don't think that is real food. It is about eating real food that nourishes you. Some people can take this to the next level, and in some cases we decide to bring in fasting. Now, I'm very careful when it comes to fasting. It is not for all women all the time, because fasting can impact your hormones. But if you do some fasting, you can bring the blood sugar down even further. Right? Clearly, you're squeezing all your meals into a narrow window. And the 16-hour fast is a really common fast kind of timing, which works pretty well. But there's one thing that I'd like you to note about fasting. If you are a woman who's having her period and you start fasting, especially if you do fairly extreme fasting, and you are under a lot of stress or not eating, not sleeping well, not eating well as well, you can end up in a situation where your period really goes off cycle, or in some cases, your period can stop you can stop your having your period for some time. And the reason is this: it's very important to note that how you eat and how you exercise needs to change based on where you are in your cycle. A lot of the material that you read around the keto diet or around fasting, particularly what's on social media, is very much designed for men. And it's fairly extreme. So you hear about, 20-hour fasting, 40-hour fasting, 70-hour fasting, 5-day fasting. Firstly, I think a lot of the stuff online is just too extreme to begin with, but we cannot assume as women. Now, if you've stopped having your period, it's different, but if you're having your period, you cannot take that on and assume that every day is going to be the same. You have to cycle things in and out. And the way to think about this, I've simplified it. The day your period starts is day 1. So the first 2 weeks of your cycle is when you can fast, when you can do strength training. This is when your body is actually its strongest. The second 2 weeks, and I really, because nobody has that 14-day on the spot every day ovulation. What I normally say is the week leading up to your period, for most women anyway, we start craving carbohydrates. We don't want to exercise as intensely. This is the time you don't do intensive fasting. This is the time you don't do intensive exercise. This is the time you really do restorative work. And this is when the carbs may come in a little bit more. This is when you sleep more. And this really protects your cycle. And this is why a lot of women just don't feel good the week before their period, particularly if they started the keto diet. It gets too much for them. And so just keep this in mind that you have to eat around your cycle. It can't be the same every day. I'm also going to deep dive into gut health and detoxification, which are the other 2 pillars of the work that I do. This is what the inside of the gut looks like. This is the lining of the gut, and there's an image over here. So, what you see here as the lining of the gut is just this image. Now, it's a single cell layer. So what happens to this layer really matters, because your food is coming through here, it's being digested, and the smallest particles of nutrients are supposed to enter your bloodstream. And this is what a healthy gut lining looks like. Now, you can have what's called leaky gut. Its medical term or scientific term is intestinal permeability. It can be caused by eating a food sensitivity, eating too much sugar, too much antibiotic, too much painkiller, too much stress, too much not enough sleep. All those habits, not enough fiber, all of that can damage this layer of cells, which means that you create an environment which is inflamed, and that's where the word leaky comes in. And leaky just means that food that isn't fully digested can pass through. And that's really the start of a food sensitivity. Leaky gut is really, really important, because over time, leaky gut can lead to inflammation, can lead to autoimmune tendencies as well. Here are some common gut disruptors, and some of these I think will be familiar, some might be surprising. So, enemy number 1 is sugar for sure. That's particularly white sugar. Gluten is here because it is the most common food sensitivity. I think most people with gut issues feel better by reducing or cutting out gluten. Food like this really should not be allowed, right? This is just chemicals and sugar all combined together. Dairy is a common food sensitivity. So if somebody's, I personally enjoy dairy. I like dairy in certain ways. So I think you have to pick and choose. I don't have a dairy sensitivity, but for people who do, we talk about cutting it out for a period of time and then looking at bringing it in. Certain dairy products are healthy. Some fermented dairy products are healthy for you. Not all of them are, but this is a common food trigger. Salads are here for a reason, just because raw food is difficult to digest. So if you're dealing with a gut issue, if you're not able to digest well, then you might do better with some warm or cooked food rather than a large raw salad. I know we've just come off a pandemic, but I think this tendency to over-sanitize can impact the skin microbiome. And I think we have to be careful with that. That can also over time affect gut microbiome. Stress, sleep, Antibiotic overuse, there are situations where antibiotics are needed, and I think now there is a great awareness of not using antibiotics unless it's absolutely needed. But I think many of us have grown up with a lot of antibiotics, and so there might still be the impact of that. And there is antibiotics in food, so just choosing better quality products makes a huge difference. How does your gut impact your hormones? There are many ways it does, but I'd like to share this one particular pathway. So if you remember, I talked a lot about the pathway of estrogen. Estrogen is produced in the ovaries, goes into it's in the body. After it does its job, it goes to the liver, and then it exits. It's supposed to exit, and there's a little bit of a backflow that happens, and that's perfectly natural. This is healthy. Now, if you don't have a healthy microbiome, this still happens, but you get a bit stuck over here. And instead of exiting the body, most of the estrogen comes back. It's almost like you're marinating in this hormone, right, for longer than you need to. This can be really problematic. So getting your gut, getting your detoxification in order is really, really important as a basic hormonal strategy. I want to share this just to show that going on a juice cleanse is not detoxification. Detoxification is a complex process that happens in the body all the time. Toxins go through a two-phase process, phase 1 and phase 2, and I won't go into all of this in detail. They go through these two phases before they're eliminated. Now, what's important to know is that there are a lot of nutrients that are needed in phase 1, and there are a lot of nutrients that are needed in phase 2. And interestingly, in phase 2, you need certain amino acids. So people who don't consume enough protein or don't digest protein well to break them down to make amino acids can end up with a situation where they don't detoxify well. And this is one of the major issues I have with people going on something like a cleanse, which doesn't give you most of the amino acids that you need. You're getting, good stuff through, say, green juices, but just consuming that for days on end doesn't give you what you need in order to detoxify. So that is a very misleading way of thinking. And more importantly, the body knows how to do this. We don't need to give the body a break. We don't need to do that. We need to give it what it needs to do its job. We run a number of tests, and I'm just sharing some images. One of the tests that we run, a urine test, actually shows us how well a person is detoxifying. This is a urine-based test. The same test also shows us what's going on in the gut. So in this person's case, their probiotics are not high enough, and they have a massive overgrowth of yeast. I see this a lot. I see yeast overgrowth is an issue with bloating, with brain fog, with skin issues, with autoimmune issues, a very, very common situation. And once you know what you're dealing with, it's much easier to just get organized and figure out a protocol and strategy to deal with it. We also run food sensitivity testing, and this is an example of what that test could look like. So in this person's case, they have a high reaction to dairy, to eggs, and a milder reaction to gluten. So, and some that one wouldn't really be able to guess, like vanilla beans, sardines, and pineapples. This is another test that we use. It's another urine-based test. It's called the Dutch test, and the Dutch stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. It measures your stress hormones, but it also measures this, which is I'd like to just share this. We've talked a lot about estrogen because it's so important in perimenopause. Your estrogen gets cleared through the body, but it also gets cleared through the body through different pathways. And some of these pathways, like this one, is a protective pathway. This pathway is not protective. So if your estrogen goes down this route, you can end up with, it's saying that there could be some problems down the road. This is a more neutral pathway. So this is a fantastic test that helps us understand not only how you detoxify, but how your estrogen is going down a certain channel, which direction is it going in. And this is a urine test, as the name suggests. I'm going to end my presentation today But I would like to leave this for anybody who has questions. So of course, if you have questions, you can please ask now. I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm also happy for you to reach out to us, book a 10-minute call. I'll get on a call and have a conversation with you to see if what we do is a good fit for you, or if you just have any questions around this work, I'd be very happy to have a conversation. So I'm going to stop speaking so that I can answer some questions. I see a couple of questions on the chat. There is a question about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. That is a question to ask a doctor. As I said, I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm very particular about sticking to my lane. My lane is one of functional medicine and nutrition. So I do think that that's a question to ask your doctor to see if HRT is a way of dealing with that. And in my practice, there's never a situation where I'm anti-medicine. I do believe that there is a place for medicine and there is a place for complementary medicine. And I think it's actually it works really well if you bring the two together rather than have this competition between the two. So if hormone replacement therapy is the right direction for you and your doctor believes so, there's still a good reason to do all this work, because it's not about one or the other, it's about an integration of practices. I've got a question about how you adjust your fast according to your cycle if you're on the coil. That if you're on hormone, if you're on a hormonal, either the pill or the coil, it's going to matter less. But a lot of women are still able to get a sense of where they are in a cycle. So if you're able to have that sense of perhaps this is when I would have been close to my period, I would just respect that. But I would say if you don't know where your cycle's at, just give yourself a break. So cycle things in rather than saying, I'm going to do the same fast or the same level of exercise. So, you could randomly choose, okay, I'm going to do something fairly intensely for 2, maybe 3 weeks. And then the 4th week, I'm going to do something more gentle. And that would still work. I've got a couple of questions around the medical side of things. So could I please ask you to book the 10-minute call? Because I think that's a very specific question around chemotherapy and menopause. And I'd like to have a call with you if that's possible. So that would be great if you could do that. Okay. Any other questions on and you don't have to write it on the chat. You can please switch on the camera and unmute yourself and ask questions. That would be fun if anybody's keen to do that. All right, I think I don't see any more questions coming up. So if that's it from everybody, I would like to thank you all for joining today. And for those of you who've been joining every week, I see some people who are here every week. Thank you very much for the commitment. I do hope you've just received something that is useful for you. Even if you take one thing out of this and implement it, I'll feel really happy to know that that's helped you. You take care, and I will see everybody back in August when we are back after our summer break. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're traveling, or if not, I just remain cool in Singapore. Take care. Bye-bye.